What happened to you? My high school freshman daughter was bleeding profusely from the forehead when she arrived at home, as if blood had been spilled all over her head, instead of going to my in-laws' house. I screamed. I treated her quickly and then immediately called my husband. He answered the phone, and I shouted before considering my words. "Where are you? Are you just supposed to be on a business trip already?" He responded. His response took me by surprise. But of course, I had seen my husband and daughter go on holiday to visit their gran 5 days ago. My daughter turned and she had a very serious injury. She then led my daughter to reveal the truth that gave me a puzzled look. My name is Alina Johnson. I'm a 40-year-old housewife part-time, and my husband, David, is a traveling salesperson who sells high school teaching aids to various schools. He stresses trust and that he is always behaving accordingly, which is pretty cool. This fall, my daughter Isabella joined the freshman class in high school. I could have left the hospital and come to this party. See her some other time. She was so needy it isn't like she wouldn't be around. But now I actually had a pet that knew me. My mother was still with us all of these years, and she became in no appropriate health to do something. 5 years ago, after living a decently normal life along with my husband and little girl, I have been a caregiver and part-time worker ever since. I could not even visit my in-laws' home due to my mother sick, and I thought that we should go there for Christmas too. It did not work out. But my husband told me then, "Linda, you don't have to stress. Your husband seems to be understanding, thankfully." He jokingly told me he would my in-laws' house alone as usual, and had a laugh. I was so sorry, but also grateful because I had been too busy caring for my mom. But then, as abruptly and unexpectedly as news often is, my mother-in-law was killed in an accident 3 years ago. This devastated my father-in-law, as he and David were very close, but then there was a rapid increase of visits from David to the house. I will bust my father out to help cheer him up. I want to take him for sushi. He would say, but whenever he went to my father-in-law home, the costs escalated at $200 or even $400 a pop. I couldn't say anything about the money. I was only at my in-law's house because I was taking care of Mom and not going shoes. My husband one day discussed my weekly visit with father-in-law as usual. Next time $700 and my wallet. What? My thought was that it had to be a lot of money for just one visit. My husband didn't tell me what the money was going to be used for. It had to be urgent funds, I told myself. Plus, it was also a pacifier for my husband's father. The trouble was I didn't have any extra money available, and this had been an unexpected outlay, so needing funds immediately meant borrowing temporarily from the account where I keep my daughter's contribution to her tuition fees. I have to cut down on the visits to the hair salon for a bit, and I guess it means I can't touch Isabella's money from now. My money was restored to my daughter's account in very small quantities as I managed to spare and scrounge. Isabella had done very well in the entrance exam, and as we sat down for a break, my husband said, "After so many days, I want to see Isabella." Great. Isabella and my dad go for crabs. It serves as a trophy for the endless hustle. Really? Yay, thank you. Isabella never complained, despite the fact she was always patient with me and taking care of my sick mother. I was filled with gratitude. The day they were scheduled to depart, Isabella, for some reason, waved her hand with a cheerful goodbye and added she'll go get souvenirs. "Have fun," I said. All smiles around the family. We did not know that something like this would occur. For days, David and my kid had already been at the home of my father-in-law. I was in the kitchen, making lunch when I heard a loud noise of the front door slamming open. "Who is it?" To my surprise, I shouted back as making way for the door. I found Isabella standing in front of me with a lot of blood dripping from her forehead. "What happened?" My husband was not to be found as I yelled over and over. The vigilant is AKPENING. Bringing my daughter in, shaking with fright, I called David at once. "Where are you?" I asked frantically. "I'm at work." Hadn't I mentioned you, however, that the next day after my escort of Isabella Martin to her paternal roof was turned out with factory-like punctuality upon a business trip? I was in great confusion. Hey, I didn't realize any of this, and besides, Isabella returned home wounded. She probably just fell. My daughter is a teenager, so seeing the wording in this article made me think, teen girls tend to hear one thing and then turn that into something more dramatic. Bye. He hung up the phone. If a story was that crazy, I wouldn't believe it, but of course I couldn't just say, "Yes, lie, I see." She told me what happened and I started treating her wounds. "Did Dad go to work?" Isabella sat with a white face and trembling lips, muttering something that sounded like "Daddy pooched me." Alarms went off, and I listened as she sobbed story while softly rubbing her back. And then I discovered something shocking. My husband had a secret from us, and because of it he hurt Isabella. That wasn't all. He told Isabella, who was still bleeding, "If you say anything about this now, and next time there will be more than just an injury." Then my father-in-law rollered back up from his boat ride, and I navigated to the location where she ran out of my in-laws' house when husband failed once again. Thankfully, Isabella had a little cash to go it alone on the train. But the anxiety of covering her hurt and getting home to Senna times, I'm sure. Nobody who harms my beautiful Isabella will ever be forgiven. John hit our daughter, his secret was out, and I left home papping mad. I vowed to take revenge. As she finished telling me all David had done, I opened my cell phone to call my father-in-law and found he must have already tried 100 times. "Oh, I'm sorry." My excuse was I didn't hear the phone ring because I was in the kitchen cooking. It's okay. But above all, Isabella suddenly had something important to attend at home. My father-in-law said, "I am calling her repeatedly as I'm worried whether she reached safely." I was left speechless after listening to my father-in-law's story. With one lie as well, the other husband had so desperately tried to hide away from their child who he inflicted wounds on. Their daughter ran away and went knocking at our house. Thus I told my father-in-law everything that had been said to me by my daughter. "I'll get her to the hospital, so it's fine. But I can't forgive David. I want to punish him, so can you take care of at your house?" My father-in-law told me he would help and try to talk David into crashing at his place for a while. All the while, I readied myself to face my husband by panicking about and getting everything squared away. 5 days later, find a report that says investigation of the secret David after my father-in-law conducted to his house. While I was trying to ring a doorbell, my daughter came running at me literally with his breath. "Mom, wait a minute. I told you to wait at home." "That's impossible. Here or no here, I need to take care of this injury." "She probably just fell." "Teenager probably overestimates. Do not believe what she says. Too much." Bye. He hung up the phone. There was no way I could just say, "Sure, yeah. I see," because it was such an insane story. But at the same time, it really did. As I did first aid on my daughter's wounds, I asked her what happened. "Did Dad go to work?" Isabella, pale-faced and with trembling lips, whispered, "Daddy pushed me." This was a little surprising, but I listened to the story while rubbing her back gently. I discovered something really quite mind-blowing. We learned that my husband was hiding something from us, and he hurt Isabella because she found out. That wasn't all. ifusaoisawahikichingetosoni nexttianitbgustobdo. And he snapped at Isabella as she bleed. Isabella ran out of that shit town all on her own to my in-laws while I was distracted with the bathers. Dad-in-law came home from his outing. Isabella was lucky to have a few dollars that she caught, so she could take the train alone. But she has to be the scared shitless those hours of covering up her injury and walking back home. I hope to all that is divine, I never forgive anyone who hurt my sweet Isabella. But I was furious not only that he hit her, but at the secret. If you want to call it a sin, be my guest. It felt right to us. I vowed to take revenge. With everything that David had reportedly done, I reached for my phone to call Frank, but was startled when I saw dozens of missed calls from him. "Oh, sorry. I was in the middle of excluding you, cooking, and didn't hear phone," I replied. "It's okay." More urgent, Isabella had to return page coordinates. I called many times because I was worried if she arrived there safely. My father-in-law lamented. After hearing his story, I was left speechless. He could lie to the police that our daughter, who he already injured earlier, had run away. She came at home. I therefore told my father-in-law everything I have heard from my daughter. "It's all right, I will bring her to the hospital, but I can't forgive David. And I need to black him out, so will you hold on at your place?" David would go. Dad was convinced and agreed to help me if it meant David staying with him for a while. I meanwhile ran around preparing to face my husband with everything. Just over 5 days after the investigation of David's secret, I was on my way to meet at my father-in-law's house. I approached and rang the doorbell. But before I could even put my finger on it to press it down, gasping for breath was coming toward me none other than Maja. "Mom, wait a minute. I told you to wait at home." "That's impossible. I have to get this injury sorted." "Aren't you disgraced to live in your parent of at your age? And not only that you got so much help of it. You never even got an allowance, and you went to my house all the time. I pities you. I did everything for you, but it was all piece of shit." He started sniffling, and then we just laid into him. He choked on his words as David freed them in my direction. "I am curious, what do you spend the money that you steal from your father is?" "Well, you don't need to pretend." You let out a sigh. "Are you not lying to me again?" David murmured something, and I said nothing, so while a certain photo shrunk towards him. "Living all high-end in a place like this, you wanted the money so bad, right?" How do you of this place?" It was a photo of my husband walking into a seedy massage parlor. He likely had no idea it was as common. David turned pale. In reality, this was what Isabella had discovered on her trip. Though she assumed David was looking after his father well, he continued to go out in the evenings and come back the morning. Hence she was trying to do a bit of secret investigation on him. She downloaded an app to his phone that allowed her to know where he was at all times without him knowing. When David was running the streets, she would pull up his location on her computer and always see he remained in that same place. It was a nightmare service. When my daughter searched on the internet, "How does it feel walking with such guilty thing every single step you make?" As she was about to dial the phone to let me know what happened, David walked in. He became angry when he saw Isabella looking up information about the venue on a computer and pushed her, according to prosecutors. Isabella had a cut and blood when she hit her head on the edge of the sink. You know the rest. Having heard Isabella's tale, I took my mother to a professional carer for a few days and stood outside the place filming David's expenditure on credit. I snapped photos of him going into and at the location. I was surprised my husband who came over to the place with a light step. "Did you use our savings meant for Isabella's tuition fees to do this?" "Daddy is the worst." In response to the incontrovertible evidence in that photo, my husband whispered sotto voce, "Men do things like this," and proceeded to look up at my father-in-law for his nod. "What are you talking about? Not when you have a child's tuition to pay for, not on night outings. I'm tired from work too. Isn't there an honor in taking time off?" My daughter unpityingly sighed at the attitude of her father. "Mother, that is what sort of region?" "Huh? No, I don't. I just snapped some pictures and bounced out Maine." "I thought so. Here you go." There were a number of printouts from the homepage, paper copies laid out by Isabella on the table. My father-in-law and I peered in. The girl working there was wearing a school uniform. Despite everyone looking like an adult, it was a service-in-maid cosplay. They are thinking, wow, at her age, and I showed my daughter this world. I was beating myself up, and she is casually cool with it. So this is what Daddy likes. Gross. Despite the heat, she shivered as if there was a draft in the room and handed her dad a piece of paper. "Agent, you don't have to make it sound like that. It would be a major issue for you if the schools affiliated with your business partner figures out that uniform is what drives in millions into his pay cavo. Find me a customer service representative at any company that sells teaching materials to the schools, and he or she will still have job after I'm finished with them." I shot my husband a dirty look, and his face paled. "I'll eat that." I retrieved then his schedule book. I was able to find the watch easily because Benjamin had left it in his business bag. "This just shows all the schools that you are applying to. I need to talk about your cute little hobby with Isabella and my business partners." "Please don't do that." "I'm sorry, I went too far. But I'll change for sure from now." And cluing that he could not just get away with it, he started shaking and fell to the ground. Now he is being a sorry son of bitch, but how could you go to that brothel weekly spending money there for several years and also getting his daughter hurt? Who is going to believe a big fat liar like Daddy? And Dantamila turn into, I'm about to dial a lawyer and file for divorce. You get to reimburse me for all the money you were forced frivolously. Goodbye, it was nice knowing you. No, don't do that. Yuck, my husband tried to hug Isabella, but she ran away from him and eventually burst into tears. With or without tears in his ducky round eyes, we looked at him with icy cold gazes. A divorce soon followed, and my husband was slapped with a $10,000 bill for his excessive gift-giving that day. He knew better, as well as another $20,000 in damages. It was only then that his work found out how often he went there and fired David. He was also disowned by his father and now lives in squalor. He is living on day labor. He cannot also pay the compensation, so borrowing from loan sharks was his only option and now faces imminent reprisal at the hands of debt collectors. On the other hand, I had more free time after the divorce. With my daughter's help, my mother's condition improved dramatically, and she no longer needed care. Now the three of us women live together happily and peacefully.